So when you do the shared block for reading and writing, what's the purpose of that time frame?
That is where I'm really modeling and guiding them through a lot of the higher level comprehension strategies. I'm having them ask questions about the text. We're doing cause and effect. We're comparing and contrasting, those sorts of things. But then also with the writing, modeling how to organize a piece of writing, how to add details, all those pieces.
So all of those critical thinking skills and critical writing skills.
Yes.
And I like that it's reading and writing combined, not discrete, so that they see the reading-writing connection.
Right.
They're writing about what they're reading.
Yes.
And they're reading about what they're going to write about. So what I'd like you to do is read to us a piece of student writing that sort of was the culmination of instruction. And then we'll look at some of the strategies you use that led to this piece of writing.
Okay. Benjamin Franklin was the best man back then. He worked in printing shops. This was important because he figured out an easier way to print. He made goals for himself. He was a hard worker. He studied lightning. He invented the lightning rod so houses wouldn't catch on fire. He asked France to help the colonies win the war. If he didn't ask France for help, we might have lost the war. I think Benjamin Franklin was good at inventing things.
What are some things in there that you like, that you see reflected what you wanted them to do?
I really like how he stopped and explained a couple of his facts. He took them a little bit further. He studied lightning. Well, why was that important? He ended up making the lightning rod. Why was that important? Houses wouldn't catch on fire.
Right.
So he took that fact and he expanded on it.
He explained it, why it was important.
And I loved the conclusion that he drew about asking France to help win the war. When
Can you read it again?
met with him, he asked France to help the colonies win the war.
Okay.
And then he said, if he didn't ask France for help, we might have lost the war.
That's a evaluation. I mean, there's really he's drawing a conclusion based on what he's read.
Right. I was really impressed by
And you
that.
said you had a conference with him?
I did. I met to see how his writing was so far, and he had kind of stopped at, he asked France to help the colonies win the war. And I asked him, I said, well, what do you think might have happened if he didn't do that? Why was that important that he did ask France for help?
Why was that important? A critical question. So take us through some steps that you did that helped lead to this type of work.
This writing included both facts and opinions. The meat of it was the facts that they gathered directly from the text that we read, and then we formed our topic sentence and our conclusion sentence by making opinions that we formed from the facts. So they had to know, well, what's a fact and what's an opinion? And that was really difficult for them to grasp at first, so we played a little game. We talked about school, facts and opinions about school, because they're all familiar with that.
Right.
And I gave each student 2 index cards, and they had to write 1 fact about school on a card and 1 opinion about school on another index card.
Okay.
And then partners, they swapped with partners, and the partners had to lay them under either the fact heading or the opinion heading.
So the partner has a card and they have to determine which one it goes into.
Yes. Then we kind of did a fruit basket turnover, and I flip-flopped the tables to check each other.
Okay.
And so table 2 checked table 1's work, and they walked through each of the cards and made sure that they agreed. Is this really a fact about school, or is it an opinion?
Okay.
And some of the conversations were things that I had never expected them to come up with. It was really neat to see their thinking.
Like what?
Well, one of the groups had written on the card, you do some work in school. And the original group listed that as a fact because you do work in school. Well, then when the other table came over to double check their work, they moved it over to an opinion. And I said, well, why did you do that? Can you explain that to me? And they really zoomed in on that word some.
Right.
And they said, well, that makes it an opinion because one person might think you do some work in school, but another person might think you do a lot of work in school.
Okay. So they're really doing close textual analysis, in a sense, of their own sort of writing to learn activity. So these are the cards that they used.
Those are the cards that they use. Okay. Those are all of them.
Okay. And so they learn about fact and opinion, and then as they're reading, what are they thinking about to sort of prepare to write this actual essay?
When we were reading,
so they read a book like this.
Yes. I read this book to them, and the goal of reading this book was for them to pull out the facts and the important information if they were to teach someone else about Benjamin Franklin. And so they needed to know what the important facts were how he was important to our country, or what did he do along the way that maybe.
So what are you doing while you're reading to help them be able to do that?
I broke the book into 4 different sections, and we took one section at a time. I read it, and then the students would tell me facts that they heard, and we used the STEM, I heard you read. That way they were taking evidence from the text instead of just, maybe things that we talked about in our social studies and science block or other things.
Things they already knew. And then what about this piece of this graphic organizer?
The graphic organizer was to help break down the text and then organize their writing so that they were able to put it together later. So each block goes along with the 4 sections that I split the book into.
Okay.
And we started out just with block 1. I read the section. We brainstormed several facts that they heard from the section, so the students were telling their own ideas, what they thought was important. And then that way students who maybe were struggling with it could get ideas from their peers. And I said, choose your favorite fact from the first section.
But it also had to be an important fact.
It did. It had one of the things that a couple of the students wanted to talk about at first was, well, he had a lot of brothers and sisters.
Right.
Well, that is a fact about him.
It is.
But is that important to our big idea about his influence in our country?
It says Benjamin Franklin was a, what's that word?
Really good man.
Was a really good man.
Yes.
So having a lot of brothers and sisters doesn't really support that.
Right.
It's not relevant. So that was something that they had to learn through the group work.
Right.
Through the whole class discussion.
Yes.
So then what are the sticky notes?
The sticky notes, after we had come up with our facts for each of the 4 sections of the book, I gave them sticky notes for each section, and that's where I wanted them to stop and explain each of their facts. So if he worked in his brother's print shop, why was that important? And so they could think a little bit deeper about that, about maybe the impact that it had.
Okay. So that's what you were saying. That's what takes us to that next level. Why was it important?
Right.
And making sure it connects to their topic.
Or for the inventions, how did that invention help people?
Excellent. How did it help people? And then the conclusion is Benjamin Franklin was nice. So, and then from that, they're able to then start writing their essay.
Right.
Excellent. So in our next section, we're going to stay with the shared reading and writing. That's a really important piece. They're all important, but this one we have a lot of great strategies. So we'll look at some other strategies you're using to help them do that type of thinking.